Let's see how I set up a head tracker with Flight Simulator 2020. Let's take a look at what I got out of the box that I purchased from Delan Engineering, and then we'll have a look at setting up the software and setting up the head tracker for use in Flight Simulator 2020. This is the Delanclip Fusion wireless, a 3D printed head tracking unit made in the UK, made on a 3D printer. Closer look at it. 3D print at all. See, already stuck some Pro on it here. Been using this, but look. There you can see the infrared LEDs. Back. Now I mount this on my headset, and this is not a regular gaming headset. This is a standard pair of Philips headphones, open back headphones, decent quality to be honest for the price of them. Work very well as a gaming headset. With these I install a V-MODA mod mic which plugs straight into the bottom. There's your gaming headset. I have changed the earpads on here. Cloth ones it comes with are fairly decent, fairly comfortable. Just prefer these ones. Not about the headphones, I just thought I'd show you them. Now, I couldn't get the head tracker to stay stuck on these side grills here. There's just not enough surface area. It just kept falling off or kept ripping the Velcro off. So I have got my own piece of Velcro. I found the little dots just wouldn't stay stuck to this, and you need something to grip here when you pull it off. It was just ripping the Velcro off. Hence this new piece of tape. Your hands right. Velcro's onto the side here. It stays adequately stuck. Let's take a look at the PS3 webcam that came with the headset. I've got the clip attached. Let's take the clip off. This clip just lets you it mount on the top of a monitor. Clips on here. The webcam already pre-modified. Nothing to do with this other than to just plug it in. You can see still plugged into my computer. Got the lights on. Plug it in, pop it on top of your monitor. We'll have a look at getting the software installed for all this and how we set it up. Starting off on the Delanclip Head Tracker website, which is where I purchased this from. Head over to the download section, and here you will find links to all of the pieces you're going to need. I'm just going to look at the two pieces of software here, and that's the camera driver. We'll download. And OpenTrack. After downloading those two pieces of software, install them, and we'll now have a look at how each piece is set up. Let's first have a look at the CL eye test software that's installed as part of the PS3 camera drivers. There's not too much to set up in here. As you can see, I've got my headset on, but it's not actually switched on. So let's switch it on. And there we can see the lights showing up in the software. You want to get the lights central in the image, really, in your normal seated position. So mine's a little bit high, so let's adjust the camera a little bit, bring those down a bit. So now they're more central, and that's me moving my head around. This camera is pre-configured from Delan Engineering. It's got the filtering already installed on the camera, so there's not too much to set up in here. But I'll give you a quick look at the filter settings, how I've got mine set. They seem to work well for me. By all means have an experiment, but really what you're just trying to achieve here is these lights nice and visible and nothing going on in the background. Let's take a look at setting up the OpenTrack software. There's a few bits and pieces in here to set up. We'll have a look at the settings over here on the left first. First one being input. I've got mine set to point tracker 1.1. Output set to free track 2. Filter set to Accelera. Take a look at the settings in point tracker 1.1. Now you need to make sure that you've got the right webcam selected, especially if you've got more than one plugged in, so make sure it's the PS3i, and these are the settings I've got set up down here. We do need to have a look at the threshold setting here, so let's come out of there, start the software off. You can see there's my head tracker running. Turn it off, turn it on, there's the head tracker. I'll go back into the point tracker 1.1 settings. Move this over to where we can see it, and we want to look at this threshold setting. So out of the box, my slider here was set all the way over here. As you can see, we're getting a lot of false detections going on here. I found that 5 tended to work well for me. Just slid that down to around about 5, and you can see all those false detections that were going on in the background have disappeared. Let's look at the calibration setup. So again, go into point tracker 1.1, click on the settings, move that over to where we can see it, click on the model tab. Nothing to be changed here, any of these dimensions, because this particular head tracker is set up using these default dimensions. But what we want to do in here is start the calibration. So press the calibration button, and what we're looking for is side to side and up and down. And just repeat that quite a few times so that you get good calibration of your seated position and the head tracker and the dots moving. Once you've done that a few times, you can stop. You need to get over 30 samples. I've hit 52, so that's perfect for setting this up. There are some settings in the options here that you're going to want to change, but initially let's get the centering bind set up. The centering bind means that if you're doing something, you're playing something and you've moved beyond the limits and your screen is no longer central when you're looking into the middle of the screen, you have a key combination which will center it. So I've got mine just set to Alt-C here. You click on the bind button, press the keys, Alt-C in this case, and it's bound. So we can use that, and I'm going to be using that a little bit while I'm setting up some of the mappings. So after you've installed the software, the initial settings here in the profile, you'll only have one, which is the default INI profile, and that profile I set up to be the basis of every other profile I'm going to set up. I'm probably going to set up a profile for every game that I'm playing. that's using the head tracker, but I need to get a good baseline for that, and that is going to be the default INI. Let's take a look at setting up the default mapping, or the default INI mapping. Start your software, make sure your dots are moving around, go into the mapping, move the graph over so that we can see it. Now these are the defaults out of the box. Pretty sure they're the defaults out of the box. First things first, I'm going to say is this maximum input, i.e. how much you move your head. I doubt anybody's having to move their head as far as 90 degrees. So I find 30 degrees in here is more than enough. Gives me a nice fine setting. So first thing I'm going to do is change those to 30 degrees. Now on the your setting which is side to side, the first thing that wasn't obvious to me is that this graph is mapping both left and right from center, which is 0. It's obvious now, but it wasn't when I first tried it. So looking at the center of the screen and using my center bindings, hit that, and we're now, while I'm looking at the middle of the screen, the dot's on 0, 0. What I need to do is to work out how much I need to move my head to get to the left and right hand of the screen, and this is just moving your head. I put my hand in front of my face just because I find it easier to look at my hand and my eyes don't move. And I'm going to move my head from side to side, get into the edge of the screen, and I find that that movement there is around about 15 degrees. So I'm going to set a dot on 15 degrees. That's my maximum movement, and for the default I'm going to put that right at the top. So 15 degrees side to side will translate into the game of 180 degrees movement in the game. So that little movement there will move the game all the way around to looking completely left 180 degrees. Similar thing with the pitch, looking up and down, looking at the top, looking at the bottom. I find for me that that movement is around about 7 degrees. So click that on 7, and just for this INI I'm going to set that to the full 90 degrees up and down. Roll I'm not going to change. X, Y I'm not going to change. And Z I'm going to make that much smaller because I don't want to move my head that far. So I'm going to set that to 3, and I'm also going to get that to translate into much more movement. So 3 centimeters means I move 60 in the game. Let's have a look at what the asymmetric mapping graph does below. You see you've got an asymmetric graph for all of these. Now if I tick these, I find it most useful on pitch up and down. If I tick this, it means that I can calibrate the up movement and the down movement separately so that I can give them different values. So I'm looking up 7 degrees, but I might only want to look down 4 degrees. And I can translate that into only 60 degrees of downward movement instead of a full 90 degrees of upward movement in the game. So looking up will make me look all the way upwards in the game. Looking down, 4 degrees movements down will make me look 6 degrees down in the game. So I've got separate control over that in both pitch, yaw and roll, but I find it most useful in pitch. The last option I'm going to have a look at here in the options for the OpenTrack software is the game detection settings. Now again, this isn't necessarily that straightforward to set up. It isn't obvious what you're doing, but literally all you need to put in here is the name of the exe that's running when you're using a particular mapping. So there's a few games here that I like to play: Elite Dangerous, Farming Simulator, American Truck Simulator, Euro Truck Simulator. Once you set up profiles for each of your games, you'll be able to change this, bringing in the different profiles. This executable is literally just the name of the exe that runs when you're playing it. So the OpenTrack software is going to look to see that running and then detect and use the correct INI file that you've configured for the game. So let's take a look at the easiest way of finding out the name of the exe file that we want to put in here. As you can see, running in the background, I've got Flight Simulator 2020. If I click down here on the taskbar and select the Task Manager, click on the Details pane, scroll down the list, lots and lots of things running, but we'll see here Flight Simulator.exe. That's the exe name that you want to put in here. So you can see I've got Flight Simulator.exe put in there, and you can do that for pretty much any game you're playing, just the name of the exe. Let's have a look at setting up the head tracker for Flight Simulator 2020. We've got the software open, and what I want to do is create a mapping, a new mapping for this game. So stop the software, it's stopped, and then hit in this profile button, click create new copied config. So that'll copy the default ini, and I'm going to call this Flight Sim 2020. Click OK. Start the software off again. Let the tracking's running again. And we can go in here and have a look at the mappings. So these mappings have been copied from my default. So in my yaw, my side to side, I want to be able to look all the way around behind me. So 180 degrees here makes sense for my side to side. Have a look at the pitch. Pitch is set to look all the way up. Now, I don't know anybody that really needs to look at the roof of the aeroplane while they're flying, so let's change this down a little bit, change that to 60, maybe down a little bit more to 50, and now looking all the way up is just taking my look and stopping there at the visors and not going any higher. That's about as far as I need to go. And again, this is where the isometric mapping is useful, because I don't necessarily want to look all the way down at the seats. So let's tick that. Again, same 8 degrees movement down, but let's limit that movement down to 30 degrees and see how much movement. I mean, that gives me plenty to see there. I can see the pedals, I can see just above the flaps, so that's plenty of movement for pitch for this game. Roll. Now, I don't particularly find that useful in this game. Some of you might find some reasons to use that, but I turn that off. So what I do is I bring that all the way down so that it equates to nothing. So now moving my head like that doesn't input any roll into my view. X and Y in this isn't useful, but the zoom is. As you can see, I'm having to move my head quite a long way here to get some sort of zoom, which I don't want to do, that i.e. closer and further away from the dashboard. So I'm going to make a small amount of movement here, let's say 3 degrees, equate into a lot of movement in the game. So let's call it 50, and now you can see that with those small amounts of movement I can get a lot of zoom in and out, and that's my initial settings for Flight Sim. Let's minimise this down, and so looking up and down and zoom, so that I can actually zoom and look at the clocks. Have a closer look out the window. Doesn't work out the side window though, because it moves my head sideways, but that's neither here nor there. That's my initial settings. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak these settings slightly. So let's go into them again to make them a little bit more natural. and give you a little bit more fine control. So if, looking at the yaw settings, the side to side settings, if I click in the middle of my total, so let's click here at 7.5, and I get another dot, I can put a curve in this line, and this curve then translates to, initially those movements are going to translate to smaller movements within the game, and then get bigger as I move my head, which means initially I've got more control over that movement. And again, we can do that in the pitch, do that on both graphs, just to give us a little bit more fine control in the middle. And the other thing that's nice to add, don't have to add it, but I find it useful, is to add a dead spot. So in the side to side movement, if I click a dot here at 1 degree and drag that all the way down, and I've already done that in the pitch, I did it in the initial file, but you don't have to have it there. If you want to get rid of the dot, just right click on the dot and it will go. But to add it back, so on both yaw and pitch, I've got some dead there, and I'll show you what that does. You can have it on the zoom as well, but or the Z, I don't tend to do it. So let's center again. And what we've now got is just tiny little movements on my head, and not translating into the head tracker picking up movement. They've got to be actual movements of my head. And what you'll find is, as you move your head sideways, there's almost a little notch in the middle there when you get back to the middle position. I quite like that. You might not. That's a personal preference. Same with the up and down. As we can see, I can zoom in and out and have a closer look at the dials. Move back out without too much head movement, which I find the easiest to play. Okay then, let's go for a little fly and see how this goes. See if we can find the brake. Brakes are off. Bottle up.
Alright, let's do this. Apply full power and I'll walk you through the takeoff as we go. Use your rudders to stay on the center line and keep pushing power until you reach 55 knots. Good. Now gently pull back on the yoke. Line up the top of your instrument panel so it's a couple inches above the horizon. That'll pitch us up and set a good climb attitude. And we're airborne. Focus on flying straight. Use your rudders.
Just have a look around and see what's going on.
10 degrees. Maintain 75 knots and we'll reach our target altitude of 5,500 feet in no time.
Not flying straight. See if we can get that runway behind us again, shall we? Nose up. Almost behind us. I think we're climbing a little bit steeply. Nice view though, look.
5,500 feet. A nice safe altitude for part 2 of our lesson.
That's the head tracker setup finished. I hope you found that useful. Look in the description for links to the hardware and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.